Hey family, welcome back to Jack's Making It Home. We have Labor Day right around the corner, so just like last year, we're going to be bringing you guys another cooking video. Now this is probably the most requested video that we've gotten since starting our YouTube channel, especially from those who have tried some. So without further ado, we're going to be prepping and smoking some pork spare ribs. Now when I do my ribs, I do them two ways. I have competition style where I wrap them, and then I have naked where I just leave them on the pit the entire time and just stack layers and layers of flavor without wrapping them. Today we're going to be doing competition style. Like I said, we will wrap later on in the process, and I'll show you guys how to do the naked with another video somewhere down the road. With any rib, I always start with the prep. So we're going to trim, we're going to square it off into a St. Louis cut. So let's go ahead and get rolling with that. So we got our rib out of the pack, we got it rinsed off, we got it patted dry, and now we're ready to go ahead and start the trimming process. So I always start on the back side of the rib. So this flap right here definitely needs to come off. So you need to get you a nice sharp knife and just go ahead and trim that part off. And there's nothing wrong with this meat. You can put it in anything, honestly. You can cook it if you want to. I usually cook it and give it to the pups later. And then once I get this off, I go ahead and I start the squaring process. So I feel for where the bone is, the first bone, and I usually go to one more inside of that, and I'll give it a nice cut right down the middle. And I'll do the same thing on the other side just to square it off. Alright, and that looks pretty good to me. That's pretty much what we have so far. The next step is to take off the membrane. The membrane is the silver skin that runs right above the rib and the meat on the back side. This is a step that's often skipped, but I think it's really critical because it doesn't really render down at all. So what you do, take a butter knife, get under the skin, until you can get, a couple fingers under it. And it's very slippery, so what I like to do is take a paper towel and try to pull it off the rest of the way, once I can get a finger or two up under it. And it is a process. If you're lucky, you get it in one pull. Oftentimes, which it looks like today is the case, you have to go back and grab some more. So just get what you can off, and just keep working it with the butter knife and the paper towel until you get the entire membrane off the rib. This is the membrane that I was talking about. So we got it off, and like you can see, I can't rip it at all. Now this fat usually doesn't render down, so if you leave it on there, it gets really tough. It's just not pleasant in my opinion. So definitely make sure that you take that off. The next step beyond this is just to trim it up a little bit. So these little thick fatty pieces, I like to try to just break them down just a hair, but you want to leave some of it on, just because it's going to render down. It's going to add extra flavor. Flip it over, same thing on the back side, or this is actually the top, so same thing. Anything that doesn't look too pleasant, just go ahead and take it down. But you want to leave some of the marbling, because like I said, it will render down. So now that we have our ribs trimmed and squared, it's time to proceed with the next step, which is to apply our rub or our seasonings. And we've come to our first topic of controversy, whether or not to use a binding agent. I say do whatever you do, what works for you. In my experience, the answer is yes and no. If you're using a salt or spice heavy rub and you have a lot of time on your hands, and I'm talking like 4+ hours to let that rub adhere and let that meat sweat out a little bit, I don't think you need a binding agent. But if you don't have that amount of time, then I think a binding agent is helpful. If you're using a sugar-based rub with like brown sugar, it's just heavy in brown sugar, I think a liquid-based binding agent like Worcestershire sauce is really beneficial. And that's something that I use when I do my naked ribs. But today, like I said, we're doing competition-style ribs. I don't have that amount of time on my hand, so we are going to use a binding agent, and that binding agent is going to be the plain old yellow mustard. So with the rub today, we're gonna be using Killer Hogs barbecue rub. You can use whatever rub you like, whatever works for you. You just need a really small line of yellow mustard, and it's just gonna be a binding agent to make your surface a little tacky, just so your rub can adhere to it. So like I said, you don't need a lot. If you saw our pulled pork video with the pork butt, we kind of did the same thing, and we talked about how it doesn't add any flavor at all. It's just gonna give something for that rub to stick to. So we're gonna start with the yellow mustard here on the back side. We're gonna put some of the Killer Hogs hot barbecue rub on first. We're gonna flip it over, do the same thing on the front side of the ribs. Again, a small line of the yellow mustard. Don't need a lot at all. And then go ahead and put on the hot barbecue rub, or whatever rub you're going to use. And when you're doing your rubs, don't forget your sides. All right, so that's the first layer for me. On top of this, what I'm going to do is take the original, which is a little more sweet, and I'm going to go a little heavier, but we're going to put that right on top of the hot rub. And again, just don't forget your sides. So now that we have our rub one, like I said, with the yellow mustard, it's just a binding agent. It freaks a lot of people out. You're not gonna get any taste out of it, but it just gives something for that rub to stick to. Now that we have our rub one, we're gonna head outside and check on our pit. All right guys, as you can see, we got our smoker rolling here. We're gonna try to get it up to temperature. The goal is to lock in at 225, but just make sure it stays somewhere between 225 and 250. But like I said, the goal is 225. It'll give you a lot more even cook. Once it hits 225, we're gonna throw our wood on, and then today is gonna be pecan and a little bit of cherry. You can see we have our bullet style smoker, the Weber Smoky Mountain, but you can put this on any type of smoker. You can have an offset smoker, bullet style smoker that we have here, traditional pellet style drop smoker. You can put it on the grill. Just make sure it's indirect heat and you lock in at that 225 degrees. In the meantime, we're gonna have our ribs inside. They need to sweat for about an hour. Just let it rest and let that rub adhere. Once it hits 225, we got our wood rolling, nice clean smoke. We're gonna put our ribs on. It's gonna be time to proceed with the cook. All right guys, so we got our grill up to 225 degrees. As you can see, we have a temperature probe. It's sitting right on the grill grate, and the reason why we do that, because oftentimes if you do have a dome thermometer, it's different from your actual grill grate temperature. So we did put our ThermoPro TP20. I'll put a link in the description for it. but we have that right on the grill. It's reading right at 225, so it's time to put these ribs on. To get our smoker rolling, we used our same menu method. If you did not see that, check out our honey smoked ham video. That's going to show you exactly how to line your coals for your fire if you want to use that. But like we said, you can put it on any type of grill, so whatever works for you guys. It's time to put these ribs on the grill. As you can see, it's already a nice color on them. But go ahead and square them up because they're going to cook exactly how you put them on. So straighten them up. We'll come back and check on them in about 30 minutes. So it's been about 30 minutes, and this is the point where I'm going to check to see if it needs any moisture. I have some apple juice and a little bit of apple cider vinegar in my spray bottle here. You can use pretty much anything, but I use apple cider vinegar with the apple juice just to thin it out a little bit. You don't want too much sugar on top of your ribs, because if it does, it'll start to burn. So go ahead and spray a little bit right on top of the ribs just to keep it moist. And we'll check back every 30 minutes or so until it's time to wrap. So it has been right at 2 hours since we put the ribs on, and this is what it looks like. We're gonna spritz it one more time. This is probably the last time before we wrap it. Fun fact about me, as you all know, Shannon and I went to school in North Carolina. North Carolina barbecue is known for their vinegar base. I hate vinegar, so it's just funny that I use it on my ribs, but like I just use it, like I said, to thin out the apple juice so the sugars don't burn the ribs. But we're gonna let this go maybe 30 more minutes or so, and then we'll wrap it and continue with the cooking. All right, so we just took the ribs off. We had them on for about 2.5 hours at that 225 degrees. We spritzed every 30 minutes when we needed to with that apple juice, with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Not a lot at all, because I don't like that vinegar taste like I just talked about. But now you see what it looks like. It has a great color. It has some bark that's starting to form. On the backside, we see it pulling away from the bone a little bit, but now it's time to go ahead and wrap. When I wrap, I start with some fat first, and that's gonna be my squeeze butter. Don't need a whole lot, just maybe about 3 good runs. On top of that, I'm gonna put a little bit of brown sugar. And then we're gonna stack a little more flavor on top of that and add some honey. Then you're gonna take your ribs, meat side down, right on top of what you just did. And after that, repeat the process. So you're gonna go butter again. Brown sugar. And honey. From here, you're gonna wrap your ribs. I like to come over the bones one way, over the bones the other way, and then bring your sides in. And you can put them on like this, but just for extra protection, I like to double wrap mine. So again, over the bones and bring in the edges. Let's head back out to the pit. Remember that we put it meat side down in the foil. So we're gonna do the same thing when we hit the grate here, meat side down. We're gonna let it cook here for about 1.5 hours at that 225 still, and then we'll check on it. All right, so it's been about 1.5 hours. We obviously got the ribs off. We're gonna check them out, see what they're looking like. When you're unwrapping, just be very careful because it is obviously still hot and it's gonna be some steam and some hot juices in there. It's helpful to have a little pan to pour everything in. Once you open it up, it'll just be easier to work with. So now that we got our juices out, we're gonna transfer them over to our trays so we can go ahead and get them ready to go back on the pit. But we have some really good bone pull back, and we have some really good disintegration. So that's really good just to get that membrane. And we also see that is really, really pliable. So we should be straight to go. The top half looks really, really good. The color's good. And like I said, we had some pull back off the bone. So this is the time, if you're going to sauce, put some sauce on it. What I usually do is start with my glaze. So I have some Texas rib candy. This is peach, cranberry, habanero. I'll link it in the description below as well. So I'm gonna put a little glaze on, put it on for about 15 minutes, then I'll sauce, put it on for another 15 minutes or so, then it'll be time to eat. So I gave the glaze 15 minutes to go, and that's what it looks like. Now it's time to throw on our sauce. We have the Blues Hog Smoky Mountain sauce right here that we're just gonna put on there, and then we're gonna let it go for another 15 minutes or so. And then it should be all done. So we got the ribs off. They are looking spectacular and they're smelling even better. Really cannot wait to dig into them. But before we do that, let's do a quick recap of what we did. Of course, we took the ribs out of the packaging, rinsed it off, patted it dry, and then we trimmed it up, squared it up, and took out the membrane. After that, we used our binding agent, which was the yellow mustard, just a little bit. You're not gonna get the taste or flavor or anything. It's just making that tacky texture for the rub to stick. Put the yellow mustard on, put the rub on. We let the ribs chill and hang out, sweat out for about an hour. At that time, we went ahead and warmed up our smoker. We got that up to 225 degrees, and then we threw our wood on, which was pecan and cherry today. Once they got to a clean smoke, we threw our ribs on. We let that go for 2.5 hours, checking every half hour just to see if it needed some moisture. If it did, we spritzed it with that apple juice that had a little bit of apple cider vinegar to thin it out. Those were uncovered. Once we hit the 2.5 hour mark, we wrapped it. In the wrap, we had some butter, we had some brown sugar, and then we had some honey. We did it on both sides, put it back on the smoker, meat side down, for an hour and a half. At that point, we put a little glaze on for 15 minutes. We had it on the smoker. Then we put the barbecue sauce on, put it back on the smoker for another 15 minutes. And now we are at our stopping point. It is all done and we're ready to cut. When you cut from the back side, you can see the bones and you can get a nice clean cut. So we're gonna go ahead and start that process right now. We got the ribs all cut up. We're actually gonna let our awesome assistant who worked really, really hard on today to get this film. She's gonna try it out. She's gonna get the first bite and let us know everything that she thinks about it.
I don't eat meat as much anymore, maybe like twice a week, but I definitely reserve those 2 times for opportunities like this. So let's give it a try. It is good. I'm not lying, it's good. I like, I'm not into ribs. I'm being rude, I'm talking with my mouth full. But I'm not a professional, but I like that I could like pull the meat right off the bone. I really can taste the smoke flavor. The meat's nice and tender, moist. That word freaks people out sometimes, but it's really, really good. And then I also love all of the flavorings that you get from the seasoning, the sauce, and the sauce is not too wet, like it doesn't overpower the meat. So yeah, for someone who doesn't eat meat very often, I surely feel like I have a lot to say about this, but it's very good and I hope that you all will give it a try. I'm going to at least eat 2 of these. Don't want to make myself sick, but they're good.